Hey everybody, it's Tim, and I'm watching this video back that I made about making 5 masks in less than 16 minutes. So as you'll see here, I already had my pieces serged at the top and the bottom and cut to the right size, and I'm sewing in the nose wire channels. These are the channels at the very top of the mask on the inside that allow us to put a nose wire in. We use a material from Dollar Tree that's like something that's used to stake plants. But of course, we cut it into about 3 to 4 inch pieces, and you can slide it in from either side because we're only sewing about a 5 or 6 inch channel across the top. So you'll notice that as I put each one in, that I sew down to the ends, not even completely all the way. You'll notice I don't trim my threads at all because I pull the thread out from underneath the presser foot, and so that when I stitch it down, it kind of pulls it into that seam and kind of bunches it up. I'm not worried about how pretty these are because they're really just going to be going to not to the Paris Fashion Week, they're going to the front lines of the medical field, so we're not worried about how pretty they look. So that's all 5 of them done. I'm going to head over to the ironing board now, and I like a lot of steam on my ironing board, so you'll notice here that I am ironing this out with lots and lots of steam. I like to hit it a couple times. Now, I've already positioned them in such a way so that I don't have to flip and twist and fold them later. I can just easily flip it in half, and now I'm putting the pleats in. And we only do 2 pleats for the mask we've been doing because the 3 or 4 pleats seem to not make much of a difference than what we've been able to tell. A little bit larger pleats, and of course you'll notice here that I'm just being real careful when I get it to the top. I use lots and lots of steam. So with a hot iron, you may notice if you follow me on Facebook that I have a gigantic iron scar on my right arm where I reached around the iron like I'm going to do right now to move that finished body of the mask over, and I completely torched the side of my arm with that thing. Now, of course, we're ironing that channel in. We flip the channel over, go just above where the end piece is, and then we do 2 flip and folds to create the pleats. And this end thing is going to end up about 3 inches or so tall by that 9 inches wide. And I like to hit it a couple times. I'm just a gigantic fan of an iron, a really good iron when I quilt. I like to do lots and lots of good ironing, so it's something I'm really into. I think the more you iron, the better off something's going to be. Now, you could iron that bottom piece if you wanted. I'm not that worried about it because I'm going to hit it right here when I hold it. You also may notice that my finger, my middle finger on my left hand is messed up. That's because I have a really sharp knife at home, and I had some super cold butter, and apparently it goes through butter if it's a hot knife, but not if it's not a hot knife, and instead it goes through your finger. Luckily I didn't need stitches or anything, but I did in fact injure myself quite a bit. And you'll actually notice later when I'm sewing that became an issue. So now I have 5 of those finished, and I'm ready to get back over to the sewing machine. In addition to the pieces that have already been cut out, these pieces, I did cut out strips to make the ties to go around your head, and those are already 2.5 inches, 2 inches wide by about 40 inches long. They're longer than they need to be. You'll notice there that I just put on a guide. I put it at about 1/2 inch because we're doing a 2-inch strip, and we're going to fold it over. It's going to fold basically 4 times, so it's going to become a 1/2 inch strip. So I do put my guide at 1/2 inches, and then I'm going to put my straps on top of that. And you'll see here as they go on, they're folded in half, so I have a bit of a line there that I can see. You really can't see it in this video, but you can kind of see it. I can see it. It folds a little bit, and then I know to put that right in the middle. And then I just start at the top and the bottom, and I don't really I am tacking them just because I'm so used to doing that, but you don't even have to. If you start off of it and go over, you wouldn't even have to tack every one of them. The only negative here is that sometimes I get a strap, and I just can't. There's 2 of them on top of each other, and they're folded, and it's kind of hard to get them to separate. One of the nice parts about having a decent lap while you're sitting here is that you can sort of leave things on your lap. So you'll notice that I've tucked one of those straps onto my lap, and it makes it really easier just to grab it later, and I can find the center there. Using a sewing machine is a lot like driving a car or any other sort of repetitive function that you've done quite often. It is, you kind of get really good if you've done it for a long time, and I've been sewing for, I don't know, almost 30 years now. My grandmothers, 2 of my grandmothers who lived next door to each other, taught me to sew so that I could make Star Trek costumes, because clearly I'm a very cool and interesting person. And so I learned from a very early age. My first sewing was terrible. And you'll notice that I've gotten a lot better since I have been doing it. So you'll see some speed here. Now, I'm not showing you this video because I'm trying to brag about the skill. I just really want to show that it's possible to assembly line these things in such a way that you could make them relatively quickly. And I also want you to notice that, you know, when you do things like this, figure out ways to make things go quicker, you can kind of get into a rhythm and not only do more, but it might make your other sewing better. You don't have to go as fast as me. I was sort of trying to get myself down to like 3 or 3.5 minutes per mask. And if we take out the fact that, you know, a lot of this stuff was done in advance for me. I'd already serged the edges of the material and I cut it into the proper size pieces. You know, yeah, I can make a mask now like this in like 3.5 minutes. But we also should remember that, like, this is how our kits come. So when we make our kits up in our workshop, this is where I am right now in my workshop in Umatilla, then that's what you could do. If you were working with one of our kits, you could kind of do it this quickly if you had your space set up. Now, I think this is the last of the 5 masks that I've put the straps on the side. So I'm going to turn it around, and I'm going to fold a 1/2 inch in on each side and then fold the entire thing in half. So I'm making that 2 inches go down to 1/2 inch. And I'm going to realize in just a minute here that I really don't have to have that guide on it. In fact, I prefer not to have the guide because if I don't fold it exactly in half, you know, if I'm a little bit off, it's still going to work. It can stitch in there. So in a minute here, I'm going to realize that I don't really have to have that piece. Now you go over the body, of course. There goes the piece that I don't need the guide. As you go over the body, it's like important to make sure you trap this material in, and the back of it won't look as pretty as the front. So I'm not that worried about it because the front is what everyone's going to see. And again, these are to help people to just keep themselves from coughing on other people and to stop them touching their face. So frankly, I don't really care if it's all that pretty. Now, let me move everything out of the way. I like to have a clean workspace, and it rattles because the machine goes pretty fast. I have it on the highest setting. It goes. This machine doesn't have numbers. It has pictures. So the animals, it's a turtle at the lowest setting, and it's a jackrabbit at the highest setting. So I like to have it on jackrabbit. I've just been sewing long enough that I like to go as sort of fast as I can. And in fact, this machine's a little slower than I would like. I wouldn't mind a decent, larger, more industrial machine like they put in those sweatshops. But those things take up so much room, and they are hard to maintain for just regular folks. So we try not to do those. I like my staff to be able to make sure their machines actually are working. We do have somebody who comes in like once a month, a really cool guy named Jim who's amazing, and he comes in once a month and services all the machines and listens to all the things that have gone wrong. And that's number 1, done, ready to go. So Jim does a great job with all of our machines, and he comes from the coast over to us every single month, and it's amazing. We love having him because he just keeps our machine in such great order. Now you'll see there that I flip and fold. Now some people like to do this in advance with an iron and with a bias tape maker, which you're welcome to do. These aren't actual bias tapes. We're not cutting this with a bias because we don't need to go around any corners. If you're not familiar with what bias means, it's there's 2 directions of weave on fabric. You know, so it's basically woven together, and there are threads that go up and down and threads that go left and right. So north and south, east and west, whatever you want to think about. It's like a grid, a square. And if you cut on the bias, it means you cut at a 45-degree angle across those, so that if you were to look at the material that you had just cut, a strip of it cut 45 inches, the weave would not be up and down and left and right. It'd be at a 45-degree angle. It'd be like an X across there. And what that means is that you can then stretch that material out. Cut on the bias means it can be really stretchy because it has all those threads that can stretch left and right because it's an X. You'd have to see it being done, but the basic idea, of course, is that you can then go around corners and twists, and but we're not doing that. We're just doing straight grain. And here's the great part. I literally just realized that my bobbin had run out. So I'm doing what I like to consider like a pit stop. Like I want to be as fast as the people, you know, on Formula One or NASCAR. So I've got a 30-second bobbin change here. And in fact, I'm doing it with a messed up middle finger that has to go down into the bobbin section. You'll notice here that I went ahead and pulled the threads up and cut before I put the bobbin case top back on. And that's because if there was a problem, I'd had to reach in there again. So don't cover it yet. It's right in there. And you'll notice now, bam, I'm right back to sewing some more straps. I'm back to it 30 seconds later, 32 seconds, something like that. I realized I had the extra thread and I didn't have to go cut it later, so I just ripped it off right then. And now I'm back on sewing those strips. There is something very mentally therapeutic about doing this. And I think it's about doing a repetitive function that you do well. is that when you learn to not fight the fabric, you can let the fabric help you, which is what I'm doing here. I literally go down to the other end and I flip and fold at the other end and let the fabric sort of fall into place. I know it sounds weird. It's not falling into place on its own. I'm putting sort of pressure on it. I'm pulling in such a way, but not overly pulling. Let me go from start to finish how I'm doing this. So I'm going to fold two sides in toward each other and then fold the entire thing in half. And I'm do that for about 2 inches of pressing my finger. And I start at the end, back tack it. Now I'm going to go all the way further down and do the same thing. And as I shove my thumb in there, my fingers in there, I'm just letting it fold where it wants to fold, because I'm pulling it at one end and letting it fold over itself. And as we get here to the body, I'm doing the same thing. I go to the end of the body and flip that over. And so I'm folding in, see, twice, and then I'm kind of pulling down the entire thing and letting it do what it wants to do. Because the fabric wants to move based upon how I'm pulling it, how I'm stretching it. So now this is only really possible if you're using a machine that has a needle down function. So this one does this. I'm able to tell my machine to when it stops with the stitch to leave the needle down into the needle plate. So you'll notice right now the needle is down, and that allows me to pull on it because the needle is holding it in, the pressure foot's holding it in. That's highly important. If your machine doesn't do that, you're going to have trouble making this particular thing. You might want to go ahead and iron them. But you'll notice how quickly I'm getting through. This is the My Little Pony fabric, which I thought was so cute. And again, I'm just keeping going there. I'm using tension. I'm letting the material do its own thing. And I'm pulling on at the end. And at the end, you'll notice I kind of let go into the machine, back up a little bit. I hit cut on my machine. That's the other thing. Oh man, it's $100 more on this machine to have the thread cutting. And it is probably the best $100 I ever spent with a sewing machine. Seriously, the very fact that I don't have to trim threads and go through, I can go so much faster. It's amazing. Needle down and thread trimmer, boom. Biggest things. You also might notice that this is a Janome quilting machine, the DBX or DBPX. It's literally the exact same machine as a special. There's a Singer that they make the same machine, and there is a Husqvarna big quilter, wide arm quilter, not long arm, but wide quilter. This is literally the same machine. They're made in the same factory. They just have different names on them, and I think they're made by someone else. I'm not even sure who makes them. And this actually might not be a Janome. This might be one of our Singers. We have like 15 of them, so I don't really know which one it is that I'm working at. And but they're the exact same machine. And they aren't cheap. I mean, when I bought the Janomes, they were $800 or $900 years ago. Oh, you'll notice here that I had a problem with the I folded it backwards. I folded it the wrong side, like so it was going to be upside down and backwards, and it wouldn't have worked when I got to the end. Luckily, I figured that out pretty early. So one of the things I like about this particular machine is not only the needle down and the automatic thread cut, but the fact that it's got a wider, that throat area there, that space, the arm space, so that you can do wider things. I mean, it's really important for that because we sometimes do gigantic things and you want to have a lot of room to put them in. So it's a little bit wider than a regular machine in terms of left to right. If you were standing in front of the machine, that opening space is bigger. If you're going to do big things like huge quilts and things that might have to roll up, then it's the reason to have it that size. The other more important part is most of this machine, the body and everything is metal, and not every machine is like that. So there's a lot of metal on this machine that really helps it to go to be a stronger machine. Now we're getting close to another. I'm rushing. I'm trying to get this done in less than 16 minutes, so I can be like, I did this really amazing. And you're going to notice here that in just a second, I'm going to have a major bobbin fail. It just broke the thread in the bobbin, which is always annoying. I cannot stand that. So I had to stop for a full minute and use my weird finger on this left hand and try to get down there. And it just looked dumb for me to show you a full minute of that. So I took it out of the time frame. Now I'm really close to the end of this, doing these, and I have to tell you, the other day I think I did 50 masks in a couple of hours, and I did that because I was making them for one of our really good funeral home clients. They're a removal service. It means they go for funeral homes and pick up people who've passed away and bring them back to the funeral home. And they also work for the medical examiner in a couple of our local counties. And so they get into all sorts of things in places where you just don't know what you're getting into. They'll enter a house and really have no idea what it's going to be like. So we made 50 for them, so they'd each have a couple. They have 9 or 10 vans on the road, and they're quarantining all their staff away from each other so no one's going to pass it through the whole company. But we wanted to make sure that if they're going to be going into homes where they don't know if the person may have what they may have died from, that they have something they can wear. And I have a feeling that they're probably going to keep that practice going even after the current pandemic is sort of over, and that we're trying to get back to some sort of normal. That's great. I'm almost at the end of 16 minutes, and we are now on the 5th of those. I can't believe that I was able to actually pull it off, rushing myself through. I want you to know, though, that if you take 10 times this long, if it takes you 30 minutes per mask, don't worry. It doesn't matter. You don't have to race with me. I was doing this just to show myself that I could do it. You do it whatever it takes for you to do it, because every single mask that you make is making a difference for someone in your community, and that's so important. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thanks for watching.